Now tell us how you started. How did you first start dancing?
Oh, I started being a tap dancer and an acrobat, like many of boys were, because boys didn't study ballet in my day. That was sissy stuff. And so finally, I came to New York and I started studying ballet. I got a scholarship right away at Ballet Arts. And my first job was with the Metropolitan Opera. I spent 2 years there. And then I got my first Broadway show, which was By the Beautiful Sea with Shirley Booth. And I didn't stay with it very long because Balanchine was auditioning for the first revival of On Your Toes with Zarina and Bobby Van. And I did that, and it didn't last very long, about 12 weeks. And from there, I auditioned for Bobby I never called him Bobby, it was always Mr. Fosse in those days. And I auditioned for Pajama Game National Company. And I was kept to the finals, and we came back the following day, and I was picked to do Steam Heat with Benny Vargas. Well, we were out in New Haven, and before we got to New Haven, all of a sudden they said to me, we've got another boy that's going to do Steam Heat with Benny. And I was very disappointed. So anyway, we were doing our final dress rehearsal in New Haven, and Benny Vargas doesn't show up. So who do you think had to go on? Me! So in the middle of the show, George Abbott and Jerry Robbins came up on the stage and said, this is the first time we've ever seen an understudy go on so fast in a production. And luckily, I had learned the numbers. Zoya Leporska, the great Zoya, Shrek lady, she taught me the number, and Bobby wasn't around all that much during that because there was George Abbott and there was Jerry around, and at that time, Bobby kind of took a little of a back seat, and he wasn't around very often, but he liked me a lot. And anyway, I only stayed with the show for about 12 weeks because I was unhappy. Came back to New York, got into Can with Gwen, and I stayed with it till it closed, and then I went out on tour with it for a year, came back, and then I auditioned for New Girl in Town for Bobby, and he hired me. And Bobby and I had a love-hate relationship. We did not get along. I was a very hot-headed young Italian with a lot of spirit and a big mouth. And Bobby was a fanatic for rehearsing. He was a fanatic. He loved to rehearse. He used to go to Variety Arts, work out for 4 or 5 hours and carry on. And he did not like it when whoever our union rep was, would call a 5-minute break during New Girl. He was never very happy about that. And Harvey and I had an acrobatics thing in the show. And Bobby, you danced full out all the time. You never marked. And he kept auditioning us. There was another trio in New Girl, and all the boys had to learn it with Gwen. And nobody knew who was going to wind up doing it, as you remember, till the last day before we were ready to leave to go out of town. We rehearsed, in those days, I think it was 10 out of 12 your last day. Well, we were in our last hour. And finally, I went to Mr. Fosse and I said, could Harvey and I mark the acrobatic work? We've been doing it full out all day. Look at our wrists were all swollen, our ankles were swollen. He said, no, I want to see it full out again. So I turned to him, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I called him a sick bastard. He was rehearsal happy. He always was. But I loved him. Don't think I didn't love him. I loved him. I thought he was one of the greatest choreographers we've ever had on the Broadway scene. And he turned out to be a great director. And he learned a lot working a couple of shows with George Abbott and Bobby Griffith at the time. And he really learned. He always had his eyes and his ears were always open, you know, hearing and doing everything. And I have to admire him for that. And after we had that little scene that last day, we kind of became friends, but not really after that. I would go purposely to audition for every show that he ever did. And Bobby, I used to have quite a singing voice. And he always used to say to me at every audition, when are you going to give that town hall recital? I said, when I do, you're going to be the first one there. Because I was blessed with a real good Italian singing voice. besides being quite a dancer. I have to admit that. My second show I did with Balanchine, and Balanchine gave me a scholarship to the American School of Ballet, just like that, after I did that show. And I turned it down to go into the New York City Ballet because I had gotten another job. I had gotten Can right after that, and I wanted to stay in New York. I didn't want to go out of town again. So Bobby, always said the same thing to me all the time. And I saw Bobby about maybe 2 or 3 months just before he passed away. He was coming out of seeing Dick Corthaz in Anything Goes, I think. Was that the show you did with him? Or he came to see you in it. And I was coming out of the Metropolitan Opera House, and we both kind of met. And I said, "Hi, Bobby," which I never called him Bobby ever before. It was always Mr. Fosse. So he said, "Hi, how are you doing, kid?" He put his arm around me like this. And he said, "You know, kid, you were really something. In my day, we used to call people like you a triple threat. You sang, you danced, you could read lines." And I looked at him, and I didn't know whether to sock him or kiss him. I didn't know, you know, because in one way I was so mad, but I was so grateful that he finally admitted that to me. And in my own head, I said, "You bastard, why the hell didn't you help me along the way if you thought I was that great?" But there was that thing, that old thing that went way back to New Girl. He never forgave me for calling him a sick bastard. That's my story.
You.